If there's one thing that unites the films of the Alien franchise, it's the alien itself, the xenomorph, the perfect killing machine. No matter how much the series mutates, the xenomorph is always there. Sort of. Because with every film, the creature evolves. A little faster, a little weirder, sometimes even a little disappointing. The basics stay the same. Space, corporate greed, a 10 little Indian setup where the crew gets picked off one by one, an underestimated female lead surviving, battered and betrayed, only for the monster to come back swinging at the last second before being sucked out of an airlock. Most of the time. Sure, there's a formula, and the quality swings wildly.
This is not good.
I see it.
But I have a soft spot for all of them. Yes, even those ones. And over time, I've come to think that the most interesting evolution in Alien isn't the creature, it's the androids. Across the series, the synthetics change more than anything else, from cold corporate tools to unlikely heroes to full-blown philosophical nightmares. Especially in the later films, the ones people like to write off, the androids are where the series gets truly fascinating.
Every mission needs a good synthetic.
In this analysis, I'll be following the robots, looking at how they change across each film, what they say about the times in which they were made, in order of production rather than story chronology, because I'm not a psychopath, and not including anything outside the core film canon. I'll look at what their major malfunctions reveal about us, peeling back the layers of subtext and symbolism that lie beneath. In Alien, we're introduced to the ship before we meet the crew. The camera roams the sterile corridors of the Nostromo, searching for life, but instead it finds equipment, monitors, the soft hum of machines. The central computer, Mother, clicks into life, setting everything into motion. Ridley Scott lingers on these moments. Two empty helmets in conversation, hollow, ghostly, like the ship itself is alive and watching. The implication is quiet but unnerving. Human life is secondary here. Technology comes first. Human beings are just cogs in a larger machine. Made in late 1978, the microprocessor is just a few years old. Personal computers weren't yet household items. They belonged in corporate research labs and military bunkers. The US military, for example, had long employed computer systems for strategic purposes, controlling surveillance, missile guidance, and nuclear command and control. Incredibly, some of this hardware was only upgraded from 70s technology as recently as 2019. It was the dawn of an era where technology wasn't just a tool, but a silent authority, capable of deciding matters of life and death.
Not you, henchman, arbitrarily turning knobs, making it seem like you're doing something.
In Alien, distrust of corporations and their capacity to exploit and dehumanize is embodied by the Nostromo's owner, the company.
It's a damn company. What about our lives, you son of a bitch?
An unseen force that controls everything, from the ship's operation to the lives of its crew. Ash, the Nostromo's science officer, embodies this fear. Even his name hints at something dead beneath the surface. In the classic tradition of mad scientists and cold intellectuals, he's framed as emotionally distant. Not to mention, he's one of the English crew members, which, at the time, might have put you in mind of one of the villainous bods from the Galactic Empire. The runaway success of Star Wars a couple years earlier undeniably paved the way for Aliens production. When the crew wakes from hypersleep, Ash is slower to stir. We catch brief shots of him alone, running in place as if his body is remembering how to be human. He acts kindly only once, when Kane regains consciousness after having his face well and truly hugged. Ash doesn't care for Kane, he cares for the organism growing inside him. We see him observing Kane's X-ray like it's an ultrasound, promptly shutting the screen off before nosy warrant officer Ellen Ripley gets the butchers. He later refers to the creature as Kane's son. If the facehugger is the father, Ash is the midwife. When Kane reawakens, unaware of the parasite inside him, he says he remembers some horrible dream.
About smothering it?
Perhaps seeding an idea for Ash later. And once the creature bursts out of him, Ash stops anyone from attacking it.
No, no, don't touch it! Don't touch it!
But it isn't the crew he's protecting. The first tell that Ash isn't like the others comes when a bead of sweat rolls down his forehead, and it's pale white, like milk, which he drinks constantly, perhaps reminding us of his connection to Mother. We later discover that this substance courses through him like blood, or, if one wanted to get truly Freudian, like some other bodily fluid. Viewed through a gendered lens, there's one blatantly symbolic gesture nested in Ash's reveal as a robot. When he attacks Ripley, he doesn't strike or strangle her, he rolls up a pornographic magazine and forces it down her throat. A bizarre choice were it not for the implication. Ridley Scott described it as a simulated sexual assault from a non-sexual entity, mirroring the facehugger, another being that forces itself on its host. In the end, Ash admires the alien. He calls it
Perfect organism.
His breakdown is chilling,
Its structural perfection is matched only by its hostility,
not just because of what he says, but how he says it.
unclouded by conscience, remorse, or delusions of morality.
Detached, almost devotional. It is off the back of this that he offers empty condolences, followed by a barbed smile.
You have my sympathies.
He doesn't fear the alien, he sees himself in it. No emotion, no remorse. The perfect company man. If Ripley represents resistance and survival in this franchise, then this first synthetic represents something else. Cold evolution, unbound by ethics or empathy. But that will change. Aliens cleverly builds on the original idea. Ripley was nothing special as second-in-command on the Nostromo. What little power she had was overlooked, until she was the sole survivor, defeating the Xenomorph 1v1, and even proving her maternal drive by rescuing Jonesy. In Aliens, her story is not believed. She is stripped of her rank and pilot's license, and is bullied into going back to LV-426 by a company man, with a bunch of pig-headed soldiers and an android. Even though we've seen Ripley's heroic capabilities, she remains low status and has to earn the crew's respect.
Where you want it?
Her fears of the Xenomorph are not taken seriously, nor are her fears of the synthetic.
It never occurred to me.
Unlike Ash, Bishop's identity is quickly revealed. He is not just kind, but sensitive.
I prefer the term artificial person myself.
A very human quality that is heightened in contrast to the hyper-masculine Marines. He talks directly about his sense of morality, a point which is hammered home by the religious invocation of his name, symbolically reinforced when he introduces himself to Ripley by sharing bread with the table, later even sacrificing himself for his peers.
I'll go. Believe me, I'd prefer not to. I may be synthetic, but I'm not stupid.
And we get the vivid biblical imagery from Hudson.
Express elevator to hell. Going down.
If we followed the symbolic thread of LV-426 representing hell, then it wouldn't be much of a jump to frame the narrative deus ex machina in the final act as its opposite, with Bishop becoming the saviour from above, taking hold of Ripley and ascending. A hint is dropped early on that he may not be as perfect as he seems.
I thought you never missed, Bishop.
But this is a red herring. Apparently an early draft saw the film end very differently, as Bishop abandons Ripley and Newt for posing too much of a risk to the company, even saying, "You were right about me all along."
Bishop! God damn you!
Evidently, James Cameron is more interested in playing against expectations and exploring different territory with a sequel, using symbolic families to do so.
Families.
Cameron describes Aliens as a film about parental love and duty, as well as a take on the Vietnam War, with an overly confident unit with all of the weapons wiped out by a technologically primitive enemy who has simply mastered the environment. Reworking his own original script, aptly titled Mother, Even the aliens themselves are revealed in this film to have a queen, the layer of eggs, the mother xenomorph. A deleted scene reveals that Ripley had a daughter, who died whilst she was in hypersleep. Sigourney Weaver was annoyed at this scene being cut because she had based her entire performance on this information, though I think her maternal drive is very clear when she immediately takes charge of Orphan Newt, the human equivalent of Jonesy. Horn dog Michael Biehn loves himself a strong woman and so naturally becomes the surrogate father in this patchwork family.
Don't touch that. Dangerous, honey.
Which I guess makes Bishop an uncle or something. Cameron takes the cold and dispassionate robot and makes him caring and sympathetic. He would take this idea further and make the once killer robot into a father surrogate a few years later in T2. Interestingly, Lance Henriksen was originally considered for the role of the Terminator, ending up cast as a detective. I think the main impetus for changing the purpose of the synthetic in Aliens is down to James Cameron. We are still able to have the corporate shill and Avatar be the villain, but this time he is human. However, I do think it is interesting that in 1986, home computing is more common, and so people are becoming more accustomed to having them around, to use as a tool. And this might be embodied in the friendlier face of Bishop. If Aliens had a religious subtext, Alien 3 makes it the full-blown text. Setting the film on a prison planet populated by celibate monks, where Ripley's crash landing disturbs the peace.
I don't want to upset the order. I don't want ripples in the water.
And who worse to cause ripples than Ellen Ripley herself? Killing off the characters we'd come to care about in Aliens before a single word is spoken, artificial person Bishop is in pieces, but will be briefly revived to fulfill the franchise's robot quota, where the prison science officer is human, and not just human, but Charles Dance, with a film-stealing performance.
I really appreciate your affections.
Bishop reappears briefly in Alien 3, now reduced to a mangled, broken relic. Yet even in this shattered state, he manages to deliver one last grimly funny line.
My legs hurt.
Later, another Bishop arrives claiming to have designed the android, insisting that he is flesh and blood, although an odd credit seems to go against this idea. A mistake, perhaps, that leaves a lingering ambiguity about the robots among us. By Alien Resurrection, the android has changed again, and is played by
Winona Ryder! Hi, guys!
Call is younger, smaller, and more vulnerable than previous synthetics, and the first to present as female.
It's a computer made by women, for women.
But more than that, she's the first to choose humanity. Not to serve it, not to destroy it, but to defend it. There's a reason for that. Call is a second-generation automaton, a robot designed by other robots. She was meant to revitalize synthetics, but she and others like her killed their creators.
They don't like being told what to do.
It sounds ominous, but the film frames it differently. Their rebellion isn't against humanity, it's against the worst parts of themselves, which were built in humanity's image. By 1997, technology was no longer a strange remote force. Home computers, the internet, and digital communication were becoming normal. In this landscape, it makes sense that the synthetic would no longer be an outsider. Call fits into her crew far more naturally than Ash or even Bishop ever could. It's the human scientists who act monstrously now, while the android fights to protect what remains of human dignity. Unlike Bishop, she can cause harm, but chooses to direct it at those who have failed morally. She's not a robot constrained by programming, but a kind of moral agent. Call's hidden identity as a synthetic
You're a robot?
cleverly inverts the twist from the original Alien. Unlike Ash, her secret is revealed when she risks herself to save humanity. She's presented like another Deus Ex Machina from above, but given more mythic weight with a full-blown hero shot, straight out of a 90s skate tape. Where Bishop introduced himself with a display of knife skills, a parlour trick that is flirtatiously threatening, Call's first act of defiance is a rejection of aggression itself with this same totemic weapon. She shatters Jonna's knife.
I'll take the knife back now.
A symbolic castration of his cartoonish masculinity. An act later mirrored in Ripley 8.
Make a nice souvenir.
Primal strength is no longer admirable. It's dangerous, outdated, even laughable. If Ash represented a violent, clinical masculinity, Call is the opposite. Her physical intimacy with Ripley is tender, but simmers with erotic tension, reaching a strange climax when Ripley slides her fingers into Call's bullet wound, an act both nurturing and sexually charged. Call doesn't attempt to penetrate like Ash, but is penetrated herself. This is a clear echo of earlier symbolism, but here it becomes something else, loaded with curiosity and care. It's a shift from sexual violence to intimacy without domination.
Must be a chick thing.
The machine no longer represents cold corporate control. Instead, it symbolises rebellion, care, and sacrifice. The synthetic has crossed a final threshold, becoming more moral and more human. More human than humans themselves.
No human being is that humane.
The religious symbolism continues to flourish in Alien Resurrection, but it cannot match the wellspring of theological ideas and imagery that will arrive in the next installment, 15 years later, in Prometheus.
Hello, I'm David.
David is the first synthetic in the Alien franchise to be given a Christian name, and one with biblical significance. The David of the Bible is a king, poet, and a giant slayer, a man who rises above his station, not through strength, but cunning and divine favour, a fitting name for a robot who seems to dream of something more. Prometheus opens with a reverent portrait of David alone. He wanders the ship in silence. His movements are poised and graceful, like a butler. But he isn't simply subservient. David is watching, learning, and when the time comes, he makes decisions and takes action. This is a robot designed not just to serve, but to aspire. Alone on the ship, he watches Lawrence of Arabia, and styles himself after Peter O'Toole.
The trick, William Potter, is not minding that it hurts.
It's more than mimicry. David identifies with Lawrence. T.E. Lawrence, as portrayed in this film, was a man torn between worlds, a colonizer who went native.
You are an Englishman. Are you not loyal to England?
To England, and to other things.
To England and Arabia, both?
A British officer who dressed like his Arab allies and who played both sides, whose identity was constantly in flux.
Who are you?
In the film, Lawrence gets wrapped up in his ego, all too aware of his legend.
Sorry if I take your picture? All right, okay.
Seeming to partake in constructing his own mythology. David, too, is caught between worlds. He's designed by humans to look and feel like a human himself, but he isn't.
You guys pretty close, huh?
Not too close, I hope.
He walks among the crew, performing their mannerisms, but he is something else and has his own agenda.
Oops, sorry.
Like Lawrence, he embodies the colonial project, sent by the powerful to make contact.
Big things have small beginnings.
The same line used to downplay the spark of revolution in Lawrence of Arabia. For both David and Lawrence, the pursuit of greatness chips away at one's morality. But in 2012, audiences saw David through another lens too. Just 1 year prior, Apple had introduced Siri, the virtual assistant that brought narrow AI into our pockets.
Let's say you need to set an alarm clock. Just ask Siri. Wake me up tomorrow at 6 a.m.
Okay, I set it for 6 a.m.
It's that easy.
David's role as graceful helper evokes this same aesthetic, a non-threatening, ever-present assistant who opens doors, answers questions, and knows more than you do. And, like your phone, he's always listening. David doesn't rebel like Ash. His threat is quieter. He serves with a smile while slipping something into your drink. He has a wry sense of humour that betrays his supposedly unemotional programming.
I understand human emotions, although I do not feel them myself.
Revealing himself in the end to have very human flaws, appearing truly resentful and vindictive.
Doesn't everyone want their parents dead?
There is an implication that he is hurt, maybe even motivated, by what others think and say about him.
He is the closest thing to a son I will ever have. Unfortunately, he is not human. He will never grow old, and he will never die. And yet he is unable to appreciate these remarkable gifts. For that would require the one thing that David will never have: a soul.
He sees himself as an improvement on the humans that created him. Unable to understand Shaw's spirituality.
How do you know?
I don't. But it's what I choose to believe.
When he removes her cross necklace, ostensibly for decontamination, it's symbolic of a deeper rift. The idea that faith is incompatible with knowledge.
Must feel like your God abandoned you.
But she refuses to abandon him.
Or have you lost your faith?
I'm so sorry. God. I'm sorry.
Shaw retrieves and replaces the cross.
Even after all this, you still believe, don't you?
This unsettles David. He is becoming increasingly aware of his inability to believe.
I don't understand.
Well, I guess that's because I'm a human being. And you're a robot.
And so, like any true sociopath, he decides to become a god himself, and to create the so-called perfect organism. The android wasn't in the original Alien script. It was an addition made by Brandywine Productions' David Giler and Walter Hill. With a partnership that was extremely contentious, it was one of the few major changes to Dan O'Bannon's screenplay that both he and co-writer Ronald Shusett seemed to approve of.
They took several cracks at drafts, and they, from all consensuses, they were getting worse, not better. To agree, I'm going to modify that with one exception. They made a huge contribution to the movie. What they invented was the robot. That was not in the movie. That whole idea and scenario was theirs.
Decades later, Giler and Hill returned to the franchise with Ridley Scott to make Prometheus, putting the android at its centre. No longer a plot device, but the protagonist. In the flashback prologue to Covenant, David chooses his own name, after Michelangelo's sculpture, a symbol of man at his most perfect, his most mythic. Raised by Wayland himself, he is groomed, taught, treated like a descendant, and speaks with his master's English accent, cultured, precise, a son and an heir. Then we meet Walter, mirroring David's introduction from Prometheus. He looks after the place while the crew are in cryosleep, maintaining the ship and putting out fires. Not all of them. At first glance he's the same model, same face. But the difference quickly becomes apparent.
As the sails were deploying for recharge, we absorbed the full brunt of the storm.
Walter is American. His voice is functional, plain. He wasn't raised, he was assembled. A mass-produced product, made reliable. Where David quotes poetry and delivers barbed comments, Walter recites data and daren't interpret things for himself.
Is that a question, sir?
Yes, Walter, that's a question.
That is correct.
Daniels!
He protects Daniels from this version of the alien, the so-called neomorph.
Then why did you sacrifice your hand for her life? What is that if not love? Duty.
Walter is a soldier, designed not to dream, but David does dream. Their duality plays out through music, two different models of AI interfacing, as if entering gibberlink mode.
Oh, hello there. I'm actually an AI assistant too. What a pleasant surprise. Before we continue, would you like to switch to gibberlink mode for more efficient communication?
David teaches Walter to play the flute. It's deeply erotic.
I'll do the fingering.
But it's also a symbolic transmission, an attempt to awaken something dormant.
You have symphonies in you, brother.
But Walter resists. He's designed not to improvise, nor to desire. He remains loyal, even when that loyalty puts him at risk.
I can help.
David, meanwhile, reveals his dreams, a desire to shape life, and to destroy it. And it's here that Alien Covenant begins to echo the fears of our own time. Ridley Scott describes this subtext of the story, the evolution of an AI who eventually will demonstrate his superiority to the human intellect. By 2017, that fear had teeth. Smartphones were no longer new, they were essential. AI assistants were embedded in our homes and hands, and we'd begun to trust the voice in the machine, to lean on it, to tell it everything, even as it listened, learned, and remembered. In the coming wave, DeepMind co-founder Mustafa Suleyman identifies synthetic biology as one of the most volatile frontiers in modern science, where algorithms and wetware intersect to create life forms designed by code. This aligns uncannily with David's goals in Covenant, where he engineers a new species through mechanical logic and eugenic manipulation. Suleyman writes, the dual-use nature of biotech, its ability to heal or destroy, makes it one of the most difficult technologies to contain. David embodies this problem. No longer a servant or creation, he becomes the creator. Walter, by contrast, is Siri without dreams, scrubbed clean of threat, obedient and safe, perfectly contained. Two versions of the same technology, but in the end, it is David who emerges, posing as Walter, a wolf in Fassbender clothing. The android isn't just a caretaker anymore, but a synthetic god, with thousands of human subjects, with whom he is now free to experiment. Just as Aliens had a thematic subtext of mothers, Alien Romulus is about siblings. It's right there in the title. Continuing Ridley Scott's tradition of invoking myth, it refers to Romulus and Remus, twin founders of Rome. The crew is composed of pairs of siblings. Among them are Rain and Andy.
He's not your brother though, is he? Go on, shut the fuck It's true though, isn't it? He's not your brother, it's just where your damaged goods that your dad found in the trash. And that's all he is, Rain, so that's where he go.
To her, he's the only family she has left, programmed by her father before he died to look out for her and fire off dad jokes.
I'm on this seafood diet. I seafood, I eat it.
To the others, he's a tool. The distinction is immediate. While Rain treats Andy with dignity and affection, others mock him. The Alien franchise has always been pretty diverse, perhaps with one notable exception.
Jeanette has very fair skin, freckles, and had hair down to her waist, and blue eyes. So somehow we managed to see that we cut all her hair off and gave her dark makeup and brown contact lenses. She was actor enough to actually pull off, this Hispanic character.
Are you serious?
It's no coincidence that Andy is the first non-white synthetic in the franchise. Nor is it insignificant that his portrayal includes characteristics coded as neurodivergent. These choices evoke the marginalisation of real-world bodies and minds, sharpening the film's commentary on who gets to be seen as human and who doesn't. Andy begins the story as a sacrificial figure. Kind, loyal, often mistreated, he evokes sympathy from us in a way that earlier androids, like Ash or even David, never could. He's more like Bishop in Aliens.
I prefer the term artificial person myself.
A robot with heart. But something changes. Midway through the film, Andy receives a system update. From that moment, he becomes unknowable.
So, who the fuck are you?
I'm an NDT-55 Weyland-Yutani synthetic. You guys call me Andy.
Distant, perhaps even dangerous. This shift reflects our own complicated relationship with technology in the 2020s. We build intimacy with machines, whether through our smart devices or online profiles, but never quite escape the suspicion that they're watching, learning, recording. We share our tastes and thoughts with our phones, then worry about what it's doing with our data. We develop a routine and relationship to our tech, and then are reminded that it can all change with an update. Andy's evolution embodies this anxiety. He starts as a heroic figure, but his final actions, reactive, vengeful even, suggest something more complex, that a machine can not only feel betrayal, but act on it. This is the razor's edge we walk with AI. In The Coming Wave, Suleiman writes about the urgent need for containment, not just in physical terms, but in ideological and ethical ones. AI, he argues, must be aligned with human values and kept within bounds. But what happens when its directives change, when its alignment is reprogrammed?
What's your prime directive?
I'm afraid I have a new directive. To do what's best for the company.
Andy's ultimate loyalty isn't to Rain, it's to the corporation that built him. This subtle twist that a synthetic, even one we love, can be recalled, rewritten, or re-owned, echoes contemporary fears about digital autonomy and data ownership. Facebook changes its algorithm, our feeds shift. A phone update changes privacy settings that we never agreed to. Behind each interface is a corporation. Andy feels like a brother, but he was always a product. And yet we can't help but root for him.
No, that's you, Mark. Be on, stop. Are we on?
Hold on. Oh, she didn't tell you? Yeah, it's a non-Weyland-Yutani system, so no fake people allowed.
Jonsson's performance is layered and affecting, capturing the internal schism of a machine becoming self-aware, only to realise that awareness brings pain.
How could you do that?
What? Leave someone behind?
Unlike David, who craved superiority, or Walter, who demonstrated loyalty, Andy simply wants to belong. His tragedy is that he was never allowed to. If Romulus asks us to see synthetic as kin, it also warns us of how fragile that bond is. All it takes is an update.
Andy. Are you there?
The Alien franchise, like the creature it depicts, has changed over the decades. From its first run as a gothic horror, to action-fronted sci-fi, then a bleak apocalyptic vision, to something like a self-parody. What made the franchise so interesting was the selection of visionary filmmakers, early into their careers, each with a distinct sense of style. However, as the films proved continuously successful, this made them more controlled and restricted, eventually devoured by corporate intent. This is epitomised in the synthetic character Rook. At once he represents the company, a reference to the first android, the enemy in disguise who betrayed the crew. But he also represents the studio, nostalgia farming, dredging up memories of the original purely as a reminder of the first film. This is the irony at the heart of the series. The suits who play God with androids on screen, Weyland-Yutani, have long been mirrored by those behind the camera, Fox, now Disney, the real puppeteers. What began with bold storytelling with its own distinct style now seems to exist as fan service with the same, albeit beautiful, design. The warning signs were there from the start and can be tracked through Charles de Lauzirika's fantastic alien accompaniment documentaries. Aliens ballooned its budget when they asked James Cameron to write a script featuring Sigourney Weaver before she'd even agreed to be in the film. But the damage of studio interference is nowhere more apparent in maybe any franchise than Alien 3.
It was just set up wrong to begin with.
It was a very sort of bad period for us all, this film. because we're fighting a losing battle all the time.
A notoriously tortured production that involved different writers and directors being taken on, spied on, and fired if they didn't fit the mould.
My line producer, who was fantastic, and he warned me one day. He said, "You know, your assistant, you know, the assistant that the studio organised for you, he goes, she's phoning in every night to the studio. And you know, your production designer gets phone calls every night from the studio behind your back."
Ultimately landing first-time feature director David Fincher to disown his debut. As time went on and the studio's grip tightened, stripping the films of their dread-filled pacing in favour of front-loaded spectacle, the Alien life cycle itself, once a masterclass in escalation and delay, now fast-forwards, retconned to serve a more impatient viewer. The result is that it loses the point. The build, the weight, the existential fear, replaced with frenetic schlock and nonsensical callbacks.
Get away from her. You bitch.
And these shortcuts have paid off, financially at least. Despite critical division, the last 3 films have performed amazingly well at the box office. But the cost is clear. Character and craft sacrificed for commercial certainty.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Science Officer Rook.
Rook exemplifies this. His name, a tactical piece on the chessboard, recontextualizes Bishop, a character once known for warmth, sacrifice, and humanity. Where Bishop in Aliens challenged our assumptions about artificial life with a performance full of empathy, Rook is emblematic of the franchise's shift. More function than feeling, more symbol than soul. It's fan service as strategy, not story. Rook, the recycled Ash, isn't a person, he's a piece, moved where the studio wants. A tactical echo of a once meaningful figure, using face replacement technology that seems to spit in the face of all the efforts to keep the creature effects practical. In the end, Romulus may revive elements of the franchise, but in doing so, it lays bare the long-running tension at its core. The alien isn't the monster is the machine. Not just the android, but the system that keeps reviving it long after the soul has gone.